Hello everyone, this is going to be slightly topical. This video is going to have its genesis in me looking at Facebook comments and deciding that it's stupid to post long replies on Facebook when I could just upload a video that many more people are going to see. So nothing too profound here, but I just wanted to talk about, because it's been brought up and it happens every hurricane season or any natural disaster season, what to do about price gougers. All right, so you have these scenarios. They can happen for because of natural disasters, and they can happen for all kinds of other reasons. People are more emotive when we're talking about a natural disaster than, say, when we're talking about like a concert or some other kind of event that can arbitrarily bid up prices. But every time this happens, you have, like in Florida, for instance, to now you have millions of people who are fleeing Florida, and you have a breakdown to some extent, and it can vary how severe, in the normal infrastructure, both the public infrastructure and the private infrastructure. And you can start to have shortages, and in some cases severe shortages of all kinds of stuff, and especially of certain things that people value especially high, right? So um, you can go to the store, and all of a sudden the demand for non-perishable goods like water or bread or canned food or batteries or flashlights or radios or any number of other things can suddenly skyrocket, because everyone who's not fleeing, and even some people who are going to be attempting to buy these things, and you can run out. Then you have people who are concerned with losing electricity, so they want to have maybe power generators, or they want to stock up on gas, or they want to get emergency supplies, whether it's maybe a boat or uh, all manner of things, and you can have a situation then where, on the one hand, you have the pricing, the system of normal distribution breaking down, and you can have millions of people leaving, and then you'll have some people, entrepreneurial people, who will decide that they can make a profit if they take the risk to go to these areas, and it's sometimes an actual physical risk, like they're actually going to a place where they're going to be in physical danger, or at the very least a financial risk, right? They're going to buy some kind of good that people want with their own money. They're going to invest it on their own, and they're going to travel to these areas on the assumption that they're going to be able to sell it at a profit. And there's only a fraction of the population that's going to be willing and able to do that. And invariably, whenever this happens, those people are going to end up probably charging prices that are higher than the normal market rate in that area, right? So if you can normally buy a bottle of water in Florida for, let's say, $1, in the lead up or the aftermath of something like Hurricane Irma, you might end up paying considerably more for that same bottle of water from somebody out of the back of their pickup truck or from a store or whatever. Um, and it could be a bottle of water, it could be a generator, it could be gas, it could be all kinds of things. And invariably, many people find this extremely objectionable. And I think I understand that there's just something in people's intuition that, if you have people who are in, duress, and depends on the natural disaster and the circumstances, you can be annoyed, you can be inconvenienced, and you can be in like dire situation, right? And of course, the end of that spectrum that's the most dire, you're going to have the fewest people on that end, and you're going to have many more people who are in a situation that's maybe not great, but not necessarily that bad. There's this feeling that if you are providing goods and services to those people, even if these are goods and services that everyone agrees are beneficial in this circumstance, that doing so for a profit or selectively to those who can pay is wrong. And although I understand people's intuition about this, I think that this is one of the clearest cases where your intuition, if that is indeed your intuition, is wrong. Uh, if people are taking the risk, first of all, you can't assume that because the prices are higher that there's something wrong, right? When the normal uh, infrastructure, if the normal retailer, wholesaler, transportation network is being violated or is not set up for current conditions. So, like, let's say if it's not a natural disaster, but it's some kind of festival, and the population of an area skyrockets from 20 times or 100 times what it normally is, and this is something that happens routinely, actually. Um, it's silly to think that everything's going to cost the same, as if the 30 time, 20 time, 10 time population increase didn't happen, right? If you are having a huge festival in a town that normally doesn't have a huge festival, then it's perfectly reasonable that the cost of various goods are going to go up as a result of that. And if you have a situation where the demand for a generator suddenly skyrockets to 100 times or 1,000 times what it normally is in a given week, because there's a hurricane or an earthquake or the anticipation of a hurricane or an earthquake, um, it's silly to look at higher prices and be like, clearly something is wrong. This is malicious. This is gouging. Uh, where you draw the line to call it gouging is a completely arbitrary personal one. If you can't look and say, well, it's a higher price than they paid in Florida a month ago or that they pay in Phoenix right now, well, it's a completely different situation. Uh, then people have this idea that, like, well, they're bringing these goods and services, whether it's generators or food or flashlights or who knows, whatever, and they're only offering it to the people who can pay. And that is somehow a calamity or a bad thing. Look, if you live in a neighborhood with 1,000 people and only, let's say, 20 of them have generators, and then gougers come and sell 20 more generators. So instead of only there being 20, there's now 40. The fact that those generators might only go to the richest 20 people or the 20 people who come to the scalper first, it's probably more like, or the gouger first, and that's probably the more likely scenario, that the first come first serve, not the richest necessarily. Um, that's that the situation has become worse. The situation has become markedly better. Everyone who engaged in the transaction, the people who bought the generator feel that they're better off. The people who, the person who went to took at least a financial risk and perhaps even a physical risk to provide the generator, they're better off. And then everyone else has that many more options if something got really bad, right? If 10% of my neighbors have generators versus only 5%, even if I'm not someone who has a generator, that's a preferable situation, right? There's a better chance that I could benefit from that. No, it's possible that I might still not benefit, right? It's possible that I could drown. It's possible that extra 10% of people who now have generators, or extra 5 or whatever the increase was, are not going to help me, or are only going to help me under, if I pay them or whatever. But it's more likely that you're going to be able to get some help and get some value and get something good out of it if a higher percentage of people have them than otherwise. The other point here is that what people consider like oppression or whatever is very interesting. As if an entrepreneur coming and offering people an option and saying, well, since that option can't be universalized to everyone instantly, that it's oppressing the people who can't use it. This is very similar to the arguments against entrepreneurs giving people jobs. Like if a company came to your town and said, we're going to open a factory and we're going to hire 500 people, would you say that company is tyrannical and evil and it's morally wrong because they're not going to hire every single person in the town? That would be stupid. But or they say, well, they're only going to hire the qualified people, right? They're not going to hire everyone. There's people who need jobs who aren't going to get them. There's just going to be some people who need jobs who are going to get them and some who aren't. That's intrinsically wrong. No, I mean, if you want to say that the universe is unfair, that's fine, but it's not the entrepreneur's fault. It's not the person who's opening the factory and giving at least some people an option to better their lives. It's not their fault, and it's not the fault of the person who drives down from Georgia or North Carolina or wherever else with a trailer full of generators or lots of bottled water. It's not their fault that there's going to be electrical shortages. It's not their fault that there's going to be water shortages. It's not their fault that there's going to be shortages in all these other goods. They, more so than anybody else, are actually alleviating that situation, right? You'd have an argument if the gougers were causing the hurricanes or if they were going out and clipping the wires, then you might have some kind of argument, but that's not what's happening. They're helping. Or think about it like this. Let's say that there's a ship sinking, the Titanic sinking. thousands of people are in distress, and you go out with your little boat and you can only save 20 of them. Would someone say that you're a bad person because you can't save them all? That you are only helping some fraction of the population and not every single person equally? Some person on the beach who's not saving a single person is going to stand there and say, "Look, you're a fucking douchebag. Look at that. You only saved 20 people. You're a little." Never mind the fact that they may not have the ability to save more than that. And who are you on the beach who's doing nothing to criticize? Who are you in your Facebook quote? You're not providing generators or water or foodstuffs or anything. If you're just going to say, well, I pay taxes to the government and so I get all the moral credit for anything the government does, then that's a whole other topic that I probably will do in a video here. But this is a pretty easy one. I wanted to do this as satire, but I couldn't do it because it's so ridiculous. Yes, they're going to charge higher prices. That makes sense. Uh, Even if you charge a higher price, if the buyer and the seller both agree, then it is a mutually beneficial arrangement. And who the fuck are you to argue otherwise? And they're making the situation better. The everything that it's not only like if it's a utility function, it's clearly making things better. But even more than that, the people who are risking at least a financial investment and also potentially, if we're talking about a disaster situation, their actual physical health to provide people needed things, that's actually a virtue, right? They're not just being greedy. They're not just being prudent in that they're making money by providing goods and services people want. That's good enough reason right there. But they're actually showing character. They're actually doing something that is virtuous and should be lauded, not something that should be second guessed and gainsaid uh, by people who don't have enough virtue to do so themselves. So this is going to be a very short video for that reason, but I feel like at the risk of being clickbaity, because that's what's in the news right now, it is what people are talking about. So gougers are heroes unless they're the ones actually causing the calamity, which is, as far as I know, never the case. And anyone who, I mean, I understand that people have a moral intuition sometimes, but I think if that's the case for you, this is an instance where you were probably wrong. So, all right, I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.